Let me ask you something. Have you ever lost a conversation, not because you didn't know English, but because you couldn't answer fast enough? Someone asks you a simple question. What do you do? How was your weekend? What are your plans for the future? You understand every single word. You know the answer. The answer is literally inside your head, and yet nothing comes out. A second passes, then another. The other person waits. You start feeling nervous. Your heart beats faster, and suddenly the easiest question in the world feels impossible to answer. Then something frustrating happens. The conversation moves on, and 10 minutes later, the perfect answer magically appears in your mind. Too late. The opportunity is gone. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something important. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're probably not bad at English.
That's true. In fact, many English learners think their problem is vocabulary. Others think it's grammar. Some think they simply aren't talented enough to become fluent. But what if I told you that none of those things are the real problem?
Then what is? Because honestly, that's exactly how I feel sometimes. I study English, I learn new words, I watch videos, I listen to podcasts, yet when it's time to speak, everything slows down.
And that's because fluency isn't just about knowing English, it's about accessing English quickly. Think about it this way. Imagine a firefighter arriving at a burning building. The water is there, the equipment is there, everything needed to solve the problem is available. But if it takes 10 minutes to find the hose, the equipment becomes useless. Many English learners face the same challenge. The words are already in their minds. The knowledge is already there. The problem is finding it quickly enough during real conversations.
Wow, I've never thought about it that way.
Most people don't. That's why they spend years collecting more vocabulary, more grammar rules, more textbooks, more lessons, when the real problem isn't knowledge, it's speed.
And honestly, that explains something that's always confused me. Sometimes I can understand a YouTube video, I can understand a podcast, I can even understand a movie. But when someone asks me a direct question, I suddenly feel like a beginner again.
Exactly. And today, we're going to explain why that happens, why your brain freezes, why native speakers seem to answer instantly, why confidence disappears during conversations, and most importantly, how you can train your brain to think and speak faster in English naturally.
Because if someone could solve that problem for me, it would completely change the way I speak English.
And I think a lot of our listeners do too. So let's start with the biggest question of all. Why does the brain freeze when it's time to speak English?
Okay, Emma, let's start with the big question. Why does this happen? Why do I suddenly become slow when someone speaks to me in English?
The answer might surprise you. Your brain isn't freezing. It's actually working too hard.
Working too hard? That doesn't feel right. It feels like my brain completely stops.
I know it feels that way, but let's break down what happens when someone asks you a simple question. Imagine I ask, Ryan, what did you do last weekend? Walk me through what happens inside your mind.
Well, first I listen to the question, then I understand it, then I think about what I did, then I try to find the English words, then I check if my grammar is correct, then I worry about pronunciation, and finally, I answer.
Exactly. Now let's count that. Understanding, thinking, finding vocabulary, checking grammar, checking pronunciation, speaking. That's 6 different tasks happening in a few seconds.
When you say it like that, it sounds exhausting.
Because it is. Imagine a chef cooking dinner. At the same time, he's answering phone calls, reading emails, solving math problems, and driving a car. Would he work quickly?
Definitely not.
That's what many English learners are doing mentally. They're trying to do everything at once, and the brain becomes overloaded.
I think I know one thing that's slowing me down. I translate almost everything.
And that's one of the biggest reasons conversations feel difficult. Let me ask you something. If I say the word apple, what happens in your mind?
I immediately picture an apple.
Good. You didn't translate it. You understood it instantly. Now, what about a more difficult word? Maybe a word you're less familiar with.
Then I usually translate it into my native language.
Exactly. And that's where the delay begins. Let's imagine someone asks, "What's your biggest goal this year?" A native speaker hears the question and immediately thinks, "Get promoted" or "Start a business." Then they answer. Simple. But many English learners do something different. They hear the question, translate it, think of the answer in their native language, translate the answer into English, check the grammar, then speak.
Wow, that's a lot of extra work.
It's like taking 4 connecting flights to visit a city that's only 1 hour away. You'll arrive eventually, but much later.
Can I tell you something embarrassing?
Of course.
A few weeks ago, I met a tourist. He asked me, "What's the best place to visit in this city?" And I froze.
Really? You know your city well.
Exactly. That's why it was so frustrating. I knew at least 10 places I wanted to recommend, but while I was searching for English words, I couldn't say anything.
And what happened afterward?
About 5 minutes later, I had the perfect answer. Actually, I had 3 perfect answers.
Of course you did, because once the pressure disappeared, your brain relaxed, and suddenly the language became available again.
So understanding English and speaking English are actually different skills?
Very different. Think about sports. You can watch football, understand football, read about football strategies, study football strategies, but that doesn't automatically make you a great player.
True, playing is different.
Exactly. And speaking English is the same. Many learners spend years studying English, but very little time actually using English in real conversations. That's why they become excellent listeners, excellent readers, but hesitant speakers.
That explains a lot, because I can watch an English podcast and understand almost everything, but speaking feels much harder.
And that's completely normal. Understanding is passive. Speaking is active. Active skills require training.
So what's the solution? Do I need more vocabulary, more grammar, more lessons?
Not necessarily. Sometimes the solution isn't learning more English, it's becoming faster at using the English you already know.
That's interesting, because most learners focus on learning new things.
Exactly. But think about professional athletes. They don't just learn new techniques, they practice the same movements repeatedly until they become automatic. Speaking English works the same way. The goal isn't just knowledge, the goal is automaticity.
Exactly. I've got so many thoughts on what happened this week. Automaticity?
Yes, the ability to respond without overthinking, without translating, without mentally checking every word. When that happens, conversations become easier, faster, and much more enjoyable.
Okay, now I understand why my brain freezes. But there's still one thing I don't understand.
What's that?
Why do native speakers answer so fast? Sometimes it feels like they don't even think before speaking.
That's a great question, and the answer might completely change the way you think about fluency.
Okay, Emma, there's something I've always wondered. Why do native speakers sound so fast? Sometimes it feels like they answer before they've even finished thinking.
That's one of the biggest misconceptions English learners have. Native speakers don't actually think faster, they process English differently.
What's the difference? Because from my perspective, it looks like they have some kind of superpower.
No superpowers, just practice. Let me give you an example. Imagine I ask you, "How was your day?" What happens inside your mind?
Honestly, I start searching for an answer. Should I say it was good? Should I explain what happened? Should I use simple words? Then I start building a sentence.
Exactly. Now, let's look at a native speaker. When they hear, "How was your day?" their brain immediately offers ready-made answers. Pretty good, not bad, busy but productive, a little stressful, honestly. The response is already waiting.
So they're not creating a brand new sentence every time.
Most of the time, no. They're using language patterns they've repeated thousands of times throughout their lives.
Can you explain that another way?
Sure. Do you know how to drive?
Yes.
Imagine thinking back to your first driving lesson. What was it like?
Terrifying. I had to think about everything. The mirrors, the steering wheel, the pedals, the traffic. Everything felt difficult.
Exactly. Now imagine driving today. Do you consciously think about every movement?
Not really. Most of it happens automatically.
And that's exactly how native speakers use English. They don't consciously think about every grammar rule. They don't stop and analyze every sentence. Most of it happens automatically.
So speaking fast isn't really about intelligence, it's about familiarity.
Exactly. And that's great news because familiarity can be trained. Let's imagine you're at a restaurant. The waiter comes over and asks, "What would you like to drink?" A native speaker immediately says, "I'll have a coffee," or "Just water, please." Simple, fast, natural.
But an English learner might think, drink, okay. How do I say coffee? Should I say I want coffee? Can I say give me coffee? Maybe that's rude.
Exactly. And while all that thinking is happening, the conversation keeps moving.
That happens to me all the time, especially in situations where I don't have much time to think.
And that's why speaking speed is often more about preparation than intelligence. The more situations you practice, the faster your responses become.
Earlier you mentioned language patterns. Can we talk more about that?
Absolutely. One of the biggest secrets of fluent speakers is that they think in chunks, not individual words.
What exactly is a chunk?
A chunk is a group of words that naturally belong together. For example, to be honest, I don't think so. That's a good question. Let me think for a second. Native speakers use these phrases constantly.
So instead of creating sentences word by word, they're using ready-made building blocks.
Exactly. Imagine you're building a house. Would you rather make every brick yourself or use bricks that are already prepared?
Definitely the second option.
That's what chunks do. They make speaking faster because your brain retrieves an entire phrase instead of searching for every individual word.
You know what's funny? I always thought fluent speakers knew more words than me.
Some do, but that's not the main reason they're fluent. Let me tell you something surprising. Many fluent speakers use the same few thousand words every day, over and over again. The difference isn't vocabulary size. The difference is speed of access.
So fluency isn't about knowing more English, it's about using English more efficiently.
Exactly. Think of two people. One owns a huge library, but can never find the book he needs. The other owns a smaller library, but knows exactly where everything is. Who works faster?
The second person, without question.
That's how fluency works. Your goal isn't just to collect knowledge. Your goal is to make that knowledge instantly available.
You know what? This conversation is making me realize something. Maybe I've been focusing on the wrong thing.
What do you mean?
For years, I've been trying to learn more English, more vocabulary, more grammar, more rules. But maybe what I really need is more practice using what I already know.
That's a huge realization because many learners spend years studying English, but very little time speaking English. And then they wonder why conversations feel difficult.
That sounds exactly like me.
And don't worry, you're not alone. Most learners do the same thing, but once you understand the problem, you can start fixing it.
Okay, I understand now why native speakers sound fast, but there's still one thing that slows me down. Even when I know the answer, sometimes I get nervous, and the moment I get nervous, everything becomes harder.
That's because confidence plays a much bigger role in fluency than most people realize. And what we're about to discuss next might be the biggest reason English learners struggle during conversations: fear.
Emma, I think we've discovered something important today. My problem isn't always English. Sometimes it's my confidence, because there are moments when I actually know the answer, but I still can't say it.
And that's exactly what we need to talk about next, because fear is one of the biggest enemies of fluency.
Fear? You mean fear of making mistakes?
Yes, but not just that. Fear of sounding stupid, fear of being judged, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of not being perfect. All of those fears create pressure, and pressure slows your brain down.
Exactly. I've got so many thoughts on what happened this week. That makes sense. Because when I'm talking to friends, I speak much better. But when I'm talking to someone important, everything changes.
Exactly. Let's imagine two situations. In the first situation, you're talking to your best friend. Relaxed, comfortable, no pressure. In the second situation, you're sitting in a job interview. The interviewer asks, "Tell me about yourself." Which situation feels easier?
Definitely talking to my friend. Not even close.
Why? Your English didn't change. Your vocabulary didn't disappear. Your grammar didn't suddenly get worse. So what's different?
The pressure.
Exactly. And pressure changes how the brain works. Think about this. A few years ago, researchers discovered something interesting. When people become anxious, their brains devote more energy to worrying. Less energy remains available for thinking clearly.
So my brain is multitasking again?
Exactly. Let's listen to what happens inside a nervous learner's mind. Someone asks, "What are your hobbies?" The learner starts thinking, "Okay, answer the question." Then immediately, "Don't make mistakes. Don't forget grammar. What if my pronunciation sounds bad? What if they think my English is weak?" Now the brain is fighting two battles: communication and fear.
And fear usually wins.
Unfortunately, yes.
I think I know another problem. I always want my sentences to be perfect.
That's one of the most common mistakes English learners make. And ironically, it's the thing that often prevents fluency.
Really?
Absolutely. Imagine you're learning to play basketball. Would you stop before every shot and think, is my arm position perfect? Is my foot placement perfect? Is my timing perfect?
No, I would never make the shot.
Exactly. But many learners do this with English. Before speaking, they analyze everything. And while they're analyzing, the conversation moves forward.
Have you ever seen this happen with one of your students?
Many times. I once worked with a student named Sarah. Her English was excellent. She understood movies, she understood podcasts, she read English books every day. But when she spoke, she hesitated constantly.
Why?
Because she wanted every sentence to be perfect. Every word, every tense, every pronunciation. And that perfectionism created fear. One day I told her something that changed everything. I said, "Your goal isn't perfect English. Your goal is successful communication."
Wow, that's a big difference.
It changed her mindset completely. Instead of trying to sound perfect, she focused on expressing ideas. And suddenly, her speaking speed improved. Not because her English changed, because her fear disappeared.
This reminds me of children. Kids seem fearless when learning languages.
Exactly. Think about a child learning their first language. Do they worry about grammar?
Not at all.
Do they stop speaking because they make mistakes?
No. They just keep talking.
And that's why they improve so quickly. They don't fear mistakes. They expect mistakes. For them, mistakes are normal.
Adults often do the opposite. They try to avoid mistakes completely, and that fear slows progress. So what's the solution? How do we stop being afraid?
By changing how we view mistakes. Let me ask you something. When a baby falls while learning to walk, do people laugh?
Of course not.
Why?
Because falling is part of learning.
Exactly. Now apply that to English. Why should language learning be any different? Mistakes aren't evidence of failure. They're evidence of progress. Every mistake means you're trying. Every mistake means you're practicing. Every mistake means you're moving forward.
I wish more learners understood that.
Me too, because many people stay silent simply to avoid mistakes, and silence never builds fluency. Speaking does.
So confidence comes first?
Actually, no, and this is important. Most learners think, when I become confident, I'll start speaking. But that's backwards. Confidence doesn't come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking.
Say that again, because that's powerful.
Confidence doesn't come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. The more conversations you have, the more confidence you build. The more mistakes you survive, the stronger you become. The more experience you gain, the less fear controls you. So here's a challenge for everyone listening today. For the next 7 days, stop trying to sound perfect. Instead, focus on responding. Focus on participating. Focus on communicating. If your grammar isn't perfect, keep talking. If your pronunciation isn't perfect, keep talking. If you make a mistake, keep talking. Because fluency grows through action, not perfection.
You know what? I think that's something I needed to hear. For years, I've been waiting to become confident before speaking. But now I realize speaking is what creates confidence.
Exactly. And once you understand that, everything starts to change.
Okay, we've talked about why the brain freezes, we've talked about why native speakers sound fast, and we've talked about how fear slows us down. But now I want practical solutions. What can listeners start doing today to respond faster in English?
Perfect question.
Okay, Emma, we've talked about the problems. Now I want solutions. If someone listening today wants to start responding faster in English, what's the first thing they should do?
The first technique is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. I call it the 3-second rule.
The 3-second rule sounds interesting. What is it?
Whenever someone asks you a question, you have 3 seconds to start speaking. Not 3 seconds to create the perfect answer, 3 seconds to start speaking.
Exactly. I've got so many thoughts on what happened this week. Wait, what if I don't know exactly what I want to say yet?
That's the point. Most learners wait for the perfect sentence before opening their mouths. Fluent speakers don't. They start speaking first. Then they build their answer while talking.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's say I ask you, what's your favorite season? What would most learners do?
Think, analyze, search for words, check grammar, then answer.
Exactly. And that process can take 10 seconds. Now watch this. What's your favorite season?
I think my favorite season is summer because...
Perfect. Did you notice what happened? You started speaking immediately. Your answer wasn't complete, but that's okay, because once you started talking, your brain began generating ideas.
Actually, that's true. The words came more easily after I started.
Exactly. Speaking creates momentum. Silence creates pressure.
I think I know why many learners hesitate. They're afraid of making mistakes.
Absolutely. They believe the first sentence must be perfect, but conversations don't work that way. Imagine you're talking with a friend. Would you rather hear a perfect answer after 15 seconds or a natural answer immediately?
Definitely the natural answer.
Exactly. Communication values connection more than perfection, and fast responses create natural conversations.
Do native speakers use this technique too?
Without realizing it, all the time. Think about this. When someone asks a native speaker a difficult question, do they instantly know the entire answer?
Probably not.
Exactly. They often begin with phrases like, "That's a good question. Let me think about that." Honestly? Well, I think. These phrases buy time.
So they're thinking while speaking.
Yes, and that's a huge skill. Many learners think speaking and thinking happen separately. Fluent speakers do both at the same time. Let's practice. I'll ask you a question. Don't worry about perfection. Just start talking. Ready?
Ready.
What's one place you'd love to visit?
Well, I'd love to visit Japan because I've always been interested in the culture.
Excellent. Notice that word? Well, that's a conversation starter. It gives your brain time to organize ideas. Now, another question. What's your biggest goal this year?
That's a good question. I think my biggest goal is improving my English communication skills.
Perfect. You used another natural phrase. That's a good question. Again, you're buying thinking time while keeping the conversation moving.
So these phrases are useful?
Extremely useful. Here are some of my favorites. Well, let me think. That's interesting. Honestly, to be honest, that's a great question. I've never thought about that before. From my experience, these phrases are natural. Native speakers use them constantly, and they reduce pressure.
Because I don't need the perfect answer immediately.
Exactly. You only need to start.
What's the best way to practice this?
Very simple. Every day, ask yourself 10 random questions. Questions like, what's your favorite movie? What did you eat today? Where would you like to travel? What's something you're grateful for? And here's the rule. Answer within 3 seconds. No writing, no translating, no preparation. Just speak.
That sounds challenging.
It is. But that's why it works, because real conversations don't give you unlimited time. They train your ability to respond under pressure.
What should learners expect when they start?
At first, it might feel uncomfortable. You might pause, you might make mistakes, you might struggle to find words. That's normal. But something amazing happens after a few days. Your brain starts adapting. The responses become quicker, the pauses become shorter, the confidence begins growing.
So we're basically training the brain.
Exactly. Just like going to the gym trains muscles, this trains speaking speed.
You know what's funny? Most people think fluency comes from learning more. But everything we're discussing sounds like practice.
Because fluency is largely a performance skill. Think about musicians. A musician can memorize thousands of notes, but performance comes from practice. Speaking English works exactly the same way. Knowledge matters, but access matters even more. So, if you remember only one thing from today's episode, remember this. Don't wait for perfect English. Start with available English. Because the moment you start speaking, your brain begins helping you. The moment you stay silent, your brain begins doubting you.
That's powerful. Start with available English, not perfect English.
Exactly. And that's one of the fastest ways to improve your response speed.
Okay, the 3-second rule is practical. I can start using that today.
We'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in yourself.